Hi, my name is David Patari, representing the Mitigating Unauthorized Scraping Alliance, or MUSA. Welcome to our talk about cyber threat intelligence applied to scraping mitigation, where we will delve into the world of cyber threat intelligence, or CTI, and its practical application in scraping mitigation. In this webinar, we'll explore how organizations can leverage cyber threat intelligence to fortify their defenses against scraping threats. Our speaker today is an expert from OWN, and will address key questions to help you understand the significance of cyber threat intelligence in today's security landscape. First, Morgan, thank you so much for being here today. Can you provide a brief introduction to OWN and its role in the cybersecurity domain?
Hello, David. Good evening. My name is Morgan. First, thanks for the invitation. So OWN is a cybersecurity company based in Paris, but we have clients all over the world, and we work with small businesses, middle-sized businesses, administrations. We do pure cybersecurity. It means what we do is audit, consulting, threat intelligence, CERT, and SOC. So it's easy. CERT is the Computer Emergency Response Team. It's people, who you call when you have been infected, and SOC is people who are trying to protect you. And we have 60 consultants. We speak almost 9 languages. So, and I work there as a CTI analyst. In the past, I used to be a translator, CTI analyst in the army, where I worked on a variety of subjects. And now I work in CTI, mainly fighting scraping.
And that's a great segue to, from your perspective, what is scraping and why is it a problem for companies?
So let's start, with what the professionals say. OWASP, so it's the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, so the foundation, they define scraping as an automated threat classified as abuse of functionality. So what's important is automated and abuse of functionality. So scraping, basically, when you are using your phone on a social network, you are looking at a profile, you're sending a request, to have some data. So what the scrapers do is they abuse this functionality. They send a lot of requests and they do it in an automated way. So that's why scraping is not breaching, it's not intrusion. We understand that sometimes because it can be considered as, data stealing, that people think, oh, it's hacking, it's intrusion. It's not intrusion. They take a normal function and they multiply it. So they will do a request and multiply it 1,000 times in an automated way. And it's a big problem for many reasons. It can be a problem because of technology. It's going to overload servers. It's going to downgrade the experience of users. And of course, it's a problem for legal and compliance reasons. And as one of the problems is that it's cliche, but it's true. Everything is online. More and more services are online. So there is more and more data available. So of course, more data means more opportunities to scrape and steal this data.
And so just to make sure we're all on the same page, that's an excellent summary. The way I think about it, just to make it accessible for people who maybe are not as familiar with it, or maybe are coming from the business side. So if I'm thinking about like a wedding, and I think about breach versus scraping, and I think about somebody who's maybe abusing being at the wedding or at the venue. So somebody comes in and they're like, they're invited to the wedding, but they're eating all the wedding cake or they're taking the presents, versus somebody who is not invited and just crashes the wedding. Is that a way to think about it's more of like an abuse of the service versus an intrusion, or am I getting it a little different?
No. It's a very good analogy because it's like if you do this at a wedding, it's not illegal. It's just that it's abuse. So in this way, they are not hacking or breaching inside. They are doing taking a normal function and repeating it on a very large scale. So it's a very good analogy. It's abuse.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And so what is the upside for people scraping? What are they doing with this data? Why are they even doing this to begin with? Like, can you talk to that a little bit at a high level?
Yes, of course. So usually in cybersecurity, maybe you heard about it. We tend to categorize like bad guys, actors. We call them threat actors by commonalities. So for scraping, you have two things. You have actors and you have data. And for example, if you are a booking website for hotels, there can be many things. A competitor can scrape your data. But if you're a social network, then it's another actor. It can be competitors that scrape your data, commercial entities who are gonna, for example, extract your data to do analysis, or you can have even criminals. Criminals scrape data and use this data to scam people, for example, or even the more elusive state nation actors. In some very, very narrow cases, data can be used for anything. So you have a lot of different actors that can make money, or some of them use it to rebound and do something else.
So in summary, it seems like there could be nation states that are acting as adverse actors trying to scrape data. There could be competitors. There could be criminal actors that are trying to build profiles or take advantage of information like when you're home, when you're not home, that kind of thing to determine whether they break into your house. So that's kind of the universe. And have you seen scraping increasing lately or decreasing? What's your just general feel about what you've seen out in the wild?
So from what we see, it's increasing, and it's increasing widely because, widely, no, but it keeps on increasing because when you have data is a possibility. It's a possibility for, unfortunately, criminal actions, but it's a possibility for business. It's a possibility for good things and bad things, for illegal things, or just a business opportunity. So as more and more services go online, as more people go online, it's mathematical. More people online, more data, more services, more opportunities.
And just at a high level, I've heard sometimes people get confused between scraping versus API data access. And so what do you think are the differences? My understanding is like scraping is okay, it's not an API, it's not a formal protocol or program that somebody can pass data between two entities. That scraping is using what the user uses to access the site, and then via an automated way or something, it's pulling down the data off of the site and storing it somewhere for a different use. Is that your understanding, or is that the understanding of people in the cybersecurity area of the difference between, say, API access versus just web scraping in general?
Yeah, no, for us, because usually you have the website, but in the back end, you have what we call an endpoint. That's why it's important that we talk about it, because usually the users only see, you see the website. So if you are on a social network, you click on your friend's profile and the photos pop up. But actually, behind there is something called an endpoint. What's an endpoint? It's an access point. So when you do scraping, you can pretend to be a user and use the website, or you can use the endpoint in the back. So it's more technical. And when you talk with the endpoint, you use what they call an API. API is application programming interface. So it means if you are looking at the profile of your friend, you send the name of your friend, and with the language API, and the endpoint send you back. So, but for us in cybersecurity, scraping is something general, and you can scrape a website or the endpoint behind it. So that's the way we see it. Scraping it's a lot of different things, but usually it's automated extraction of data. So it can be from the website directly or from the endpoint. Just well, for example, when you're using an app, you don't see it, but your app is talking with the endpoint. You're not on a website, you're on an app, but there is a discussion between the server and you, and it's using the endpoint. So endpoint is web scraping is scraping the web, but scraping in general, automated extraction. It could be the web, or it could be endpoint.
Excellent. That's a helpful clarification. So now, moving on, let's talk about, you brought some slides today to kind of help us understand, web scraping from your perspective. Let's go through those. And I see the first slide we have here is just talking about own. And yeah, just
Exactly.
walk us through your slides, so to help the audience understand this topic a little better.
Yeah, so we already talked about on. So there is something we wanted to talk today. It's something we use at ON to talk about scraping. So to start from the beginning, in the military, they use something called the kill chain. The kill chain is a technique to describe what is an attack, preparation, then the attack, and then the consequences. What happened 20 years ago is the Lockheed Martin, the aerospace defense company, adapted the kill chain to the cyber kill chain. So the cyber kill chain, which is used in cybersecurity, it describes an intrusion into a network. So it's 6 or 7 steps that describe what it is to have an intrusion. And what's good about the kill chain is that when you describe all the steps, you understand better the subject, and it's better for communication. So that's why today we decided to show you what we use inside our company. And we are going to write a white paper about this. So it's a proposition. You're welcome to, make remarks, criticize it. And yeah, it's important that we agree on what is scraping and what are the steps. This way we can fight it in a more efficient way. Yeah, so inside your company, let's say outside, when you communicate with other entities that are implied in fighting against scraping. So just a little disclaimer. Today we brought a few examples, but everything has been anonymized because we brought only real examples. But we know there are a lot of lawyers, and there is an extradition treaty between France and USA, so everything has been anonymized. Okay, so let's just go through the kill chain. So first, pre-scraping, active scraping, and post-scraping. Nothing new. Let's go through the steps. So let's imagine I'm a company, let's call it BBB, and there is somebody trying to scrape me. How does it work? So the first step is target selection. Basically, they're gonna, if there is a commercial demand, they're gonna choose my company, BBB, okay? And then, very important, analysis and planning. Let's say there is demand to scrape pictures. So they're gonna go to my website, BBB, and they're gonna look how it works. They're gonna look at all the details, technical details, where are the pictures, how to add them. Remember, it's automated and on a big scale. They're gonna check how they can repeat it. And the next step, very important, is tooling preparation. Because, okay, you know where is the data, but you need the tools to bypass the security, to extract the data, to save the data. So then we come to the main subject. It's active scraping, and most of the fights that's going on is in the access step. So what does it mean, access? Access means to have access, to the resource you're asking. So if you are on a BBB, let's imagine I'm a social network. Let's imagine you are clicking on your friend's profile, okay, and to ask to see his pictures. So BBB receives a request, but the problem is, how do I know if it's a normal user? How do I know if it's a scraper? So there is, maybe you heard about it, there is a fight going on. It's called between botting and anti-botting. So usually what we call scrapers, bots, like robots, because they do it on an automated way. So the problem is for a big company, like a social network BBB, is that how do you make the difference between real people and between robots? So it's very technical. There are a lot of steps, but it's the core of the problem. So usually most companies, they have an in-house solution, or they have other solution. Maybe you heard about Cloudflare Turnstile or Shape or stuff like this. But basically, that's why you've all been through this. You click on the link, and what do you have? You have a CAPTCHA. And you have a CAPTCHA, it means that you have to click on fire hydrants to prove that you are not the Terminator. And so it's where the main. Sorry?
Lucas, how my understanding is CAPTCHAs can be defeated pretty easily today with Gen AI and just that general AI programs and stuff. How effective are CAPTCHAs today in fighting scraping, or have they lost some effectiveness now with this amazing new technology that's come out just in the past year and has become ubiquitous, where almost anybody can download a very competent AI program platform to defeat captures?
Exactly. It's a very good question because what we see, just like in a lot of fields in technology, it's a race. So there were captchas. Now the Gen AI are very good. So now you see more and more advanced captchas. You see more and more advanced captchas, and you see more and more what we call behavior analysis, because they really, when you are using a website, they're gonna look how you navigate the website, how you move your mouse. They're going to look at everything to make sure you're a robot. So even the captchas are changing. If you see, there are more and more captchas that are extremely complicated to defeat Gen AI. But one of the problems, it's a subject I wanted to, it's very important to talk about, is that security is a dial. So as you see, we've all been through captchas. And you know what is the worst thing when you're a user? It's when you have multiple captchas. So security is a dial. If you do a very easy captcha, everybody can defeat it. But if you do a very hard captcha, okay, maybe you will beat the robots, but maybe you will lose part of your audience. Maybe you will lose income. So that's why also we created this to understand that the access is very important, but it's not everything. It's a very, very important, but it's not everything. So
yeah,
what we see, sorry, go on.
Friction, we call it friction. And, generally when you're trying to work with users, you're trying to create a frictionless experience so they want to come back or use your site. And I guess that brings me to another question. You said it's very difficult for companies to determine, or it's challenging to distinguish between a real user and somebody that's scraping, because the scraping has gotten sophisticated. But thinking about it, then, if you're going to lock down and prevent scraping, doesn't that make a high friction or very bad user experience? And how do the two interplay from your experience? You mentioned security is a dial, but it seems that with more, depending on how a website is set up, they may go too far and you may have no scraping, but you would have a site that's virtually unusable by the users. Is that kind of correct, or that's where that would go?
Exactly. So usually what you see, it's interesting, is what you see is in the time you see deltas because companies try to adjust. So sometimes you can see that they go too hard and then they realize that they are losing customers. So then they go a little bit. So, it's always how change works. So they go very hard, they lose clients, then they turn the dial to less security, but it's exactly like this.
Yeah, and just one other quick question on the pre-scraping phase. You mentioned that, the target will be selected and they'll be identified. I guess one quick question before we kind of get to the data extraction piece is, do people who scrape typically, what do they say when they see in the terms of service or privacy policy that says, hey, please don't, we don't allow scraping on our websites? Does that stop any of the bad actors or prevent them from scraping, or does it give them pause? Or what's your experience on that, from that, on notices or that kind of thing?
From what we saw, the big scrapers are very well versed in law, and they follow most of the cases. So they always try to respect, but they know that the recent decisions that say that everything that's public can be scraped. Well, I'm not taking anyone's side. It's just that they are very careful and they follow the law. So the big scrapers, they do read the notices and they try to minimize the risk because it's a business. So they do the big ones. They try to minimize the risk. It's what we see.
And then getting to like things like robots.txt and stuff. How effective are robots.txt? Are they honored by scrapers or not honored? Or what's your experience from a more technical level of saying, hey, please don't crawl our site with bots? Are those honored?
They're honored in the sense that they will do their best to look like a normal user. They bypass a lot of things. It's a hard question because we follow the scraping communities, and there is a lot of talk every day, and most of them will publicly declare they follow everything, but then you find out that in reality they don't follow it. One thing they try to do is to respect like fair, to be fair. They are trying not to overload the servers from the technical point of view. But unfortunately, they don't always follow legal recommendations. They know they exist, they read them, they will say, of course, publicly, they respect robots.txt, but the reality is they don't always respect them.
So that's a helpful insight for the audience today. That although the public statements say they follow robots.txt, the reality or the practicality is a lot of entities involved in scraping do not. So now getting to, I guess we're talked about access, and now what about the data extraction piece of active scraping? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so data extraction, actually, it's very short. There is not much to say. It's just once you have access to the data, it's over. I mean, you just download the things and there is not much to say. So once you pass the security, it's okay. You can download. So not much to say about this. And that brings me to the next step, and it's the post-scraping. So the next two steps are data storage. Data storage sounds maybe a bit technical, but it's a problem when you scrape a lot. You have to store millions of pictures. You have to store millions of lines of text. So it's mostly about databases. And the most important thing in the end is data dissemination. So what does it mean? It means once you have the data, what do you do with it? Usually, either it's internal. So if you're a criminal organization, you're going to use it inside. Or if you are doing marketing, or if you are a scraping company, you have to sell the data. So two little things I wanted to add. Today we talk about mitigation. That's why for us it's important to talk about the kill chain, because usually we have technical mitigation. So it's when your cybersecurity team will implement changes to limit scraping, or you have legal mitigation. It's when the legal departments get involved and they're gonna send cease and desist letters. So as you see, technical mitigation, we can do it in tools or in access. Even in tools, because if you study the tools, then you get better to protect access. And legal mitigation is very important and can be in tools. You can say something about the tools being sold, being used in access, because in access you can detect sometimes where the scraping comes from, or from dissemination, how they, who's selling your data. And actually, even there's something it's another byproduct of scraping. It's data brokers. It's people who are gonna scrape a lot of data and gonna sell blocks of data. So it's a little bit out of subject, but it's a byproduct.
And when you said the tools, you mean the tools that are used by various actors to execute and to scrape with these automated bots or whatever they're using, or taking advantage of public APIs. So that's kind of what you mean when you say tools, right?
Exactly. When I mean tools, usually you have tools, what we call script kiddies. It's very simple tools that's written in a programming language for 10 lines. And then there are some very, very big tools for scraping on a very, very big scale. So for every field, there is a lot of technical tools. There are free tools, there are paid tools.
Oh, so in other words, there's a market for tools, there's paid tools, and then you said there's free tools. Where would somebody, I mean, not to help people find it, but in other words, these seem pretty available with a simple web search or something. Is that accurate to, and anyone can become a scraper very quickly and grab sites? Or are these hard to find?
No, it's very easy. If you are what we call enthusiasts, if you are a script kiddie, you can go to GitHub. It's a very famous website, and I don't think you will be able to scrape a lot. But the problem is, even if you don't scrape a lot, but if thousands and millions of people scrape just a little bit, then it's already a technical problem. It's already a legal problem because they are extracting your data without your authorization, without accepting the term of services. So that's why sometimes, how did they say it? It's the small rivers that go to make big. Sorry, I don't remember.
No, that makes
But
sense. That's very helpful. And then on the data dissemination piece, that's so there's a market for the data. And I guess as an end user, say I realize that my data is in a package that's scraped. What rights do I have, or how can I tell a scraper to delete my data or access any of the rights I have under the GDPR or other privacy regulations like California CCPA? Is there any rights to do that if they have my personal information, or any way to do that right now?
so it depends on where you are located. It depends on where the company is located. So I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not gonna take any stand. I know that usually most of the websites are supposed to comply if you ask for data to be removed. But I know it depends. And one of the things I want to say is that usually there is, depending on the country, there are a lot of different laws. So
Yeah.
maybe scraping is like authorized because the page is public. But if you scrape what we call PII,
Yeah.
personal information, your personal user information, then it's protected, because it's personal information. So maybe legally they could scrape something that's public, but then you have a different privacy law that applies. So it depends on where you are located.
I guess the challenge is that how would you know the party that's scraped? To your point, if it's hard to even determine if they're a user or not. And then for an end user, well, my data could be somewhere else where I don't even expect it to be. And so how would I even know to ask that particular company to delete or to correct or something else? So that's another challenge we can talk about more. But is there anything else you wanted to cover with the kill chain? I think it's a great way to think about this issue, pre-scraping, active scraping, and post-scraping, and a way to examine at each step where you can have mitigations or where you can where vulnerabilities are exploited by bad actors who are scraping.
No, it's all I wanted to say.
Great. So did you have another slide, or do you want to go to the next slide?
Yes, sorry. No, I have. So I have another slide. Well, so I went a little too fast, but today I wanted to talk about how we use what we call CTI to fight against scraping. So sorry, let me check because we use our own CTI to fight against scraping. So what is CTI? CTI is cyber threat intelligence. If you've been in law enforcement or intelligence, it's something very common. You gather data, you sort it, you analyze it, and then you take decisions. So what we do is we do CTI for scraping. So why do we do this? Because it's proactive. The normal way. There is a data leak somewhere, and then you receive an angry email from your superior, and then the hunt begins. What happened? You have to check with legal, with technical to understand. There was a leak, it came from scraping, but who scraped? Then you have it's time consuming, and the goal of CTI is to be proactive, because what you're going to do is you're going to try to find who is scraping, how they are scraping, why they are scraping. So for a company, what is the goal of CTI? To identify what we call threat actors. As I told you, it can be criminals, it can be other companies, to understand how they work, very important, strategy, their tools and their actions, because then you can do technical and legal mitigation. And very important, I wanted to add, is sharing. That's why, we are all in an alliance. If you find something, maybe we could share to each other what we find. Because, we find things for clients, but most of the times, the tools can be used for different things. So I'm just gonna go over a few steps. So I'm gonna go over what we call the cyber threat intelligence cycle. It's just 6 steps, and every time I will show examples. So the first step of CTI, of course, is to find the goal. What is the goal? The goal is to protect. Okay. the goal is to find for your client who are the scrapers, okay, how they do it and the motivation, and what do they want from you, what data do they want, and in the middle, what can you do to stop them? So if you look, I took a few examples. So I put a nice picture. It's from what we call a scraping farm, because actually, technically, it's very easy to scrape using mobile phones because they have a fingerprint that's very hard to detect. So on the left, you see, it's a real message from a Russian criminal forum. And actually, it's a real message where people are trying to scrape what we call BBB, okay, a social network.
And
Sorry,
just to
go on.
stop you, the image you're discussing, is this one in the middle of the slide where you see
Exactly.
it looks like there's hundreds of those are little cell phones. And so you're saying that these entities are using cell phones I guess, a massive network to execute and to look like end users.
Exactly. Because from a technical point of view, the mobile phones all look the same. It's a technical detail, but it's very hard to when people are using a cell phone. It's very hard to detect if they are a robot or not.
And is this a one-off or is this a common way that these
No, there is a huge business. You would not believe it. It's actually you can find in countries where mobile subscriptions are low, you can from the people we track, you can go there with $5,000 and open a farm that's with maybe 200 phones. It's something. It's not extremely complicated to do. It's not extremely complicated to do.
Wow. Okay. So this is a very common thing, and it's something that somebody can go and purchase access to, and just to help companies understand what they're up against, because this looks like a very sophisticated. I mean, it's unusual, but it's made to look like users are accessing the site, but it's actually the information being pulled is actually for scraping.
Exactly. And it's, sometimes it may look a little messy, but it works very well. It works very well, and it's a business. So, the income compared to what they spend is very good. So that's why scripting, like everything, is a lot about money.
That's right.
So I'm just on the left, you can see it's criminals and they want to scrape a social network and they want the name of the people and the city. So you can see how they target people and they want to scrape everybody. And one last thing, if you look on the right, so there is a graph. It's for a company called BBB. And basically what we did is we did market analysis. Like, okay, your company has data. How do you know what people want? So we just did market analysis, search engine optimization. You can look when people look for your company, BBB, scraping, what is the next word that is the most search, okay? So for this company, you can see that comments, followers, and emails are the most searched thing on search engine. So it means it's the most at risk.
So this type of cyber threat intelligence, this is a kind of the first step that a company would go through with somebody like a team like yours, or to understand what's going on and what the threat actor, what the group is trying to get from their company's website, their company's public APIs. Is that kind of an accurate way? Like, in other words, this is the first step to even and to understand what they're trying to get to.
Exactly. It's the first step because, like everything, it's a problem. So first you have to understand it's scraping, who are the people and what do they want? And then you can delve into the detail. But first, the first thing you have to understand is who is after you and what do they want? So it's the first step and it's the kind of thing we do.
That's great. And that seems to be, for understanding any threat actor, probably a first step, but especially in the scraping context.
Okay, let me show you the next. So the next step is to what we call collection of data from sources. So as I told you, the most important thing usually is access. People are accessing your servers. So the first thing you're gonna think about is, okay, let's look at all the connections. So it's what we call technical sources, technical information. So you're gonna have like a list, like all of the connections, and you're gonna look at this. But actually, what's very interesting is that you have a lot of different sources, because anything can be a source. You can, we do market tracking. For example, you can look at the tools. Who is making the tools? How the tools are changing? How the price of the tools are changing? What we do is OSINT. You know, OSINT is open source intelligence, and it's publicly available information. So we track which companies are scraping, what data they are, you know, selling at which price, and we can even check sometimes what's exposed their infrastructure. We can look at the job openings they have. We look at everything. And one thing, this is a nice example I'll show you, is that we look for social, like online exchange places, basically chats. So on this example, you see it's a drama in 3 acts. So we were looking for, you know, good information, and we found one place where all the people working in big scraping companies, they go in one place where they chat, and you can see the problems they have. So if you look at this slide, at the top, somebody wants to scrape BBB. He asks for help. And you look at the second slide, at the second picture, okay, it's the guy, the user actually is a very talented, and he explains, no problem, you want to scrape BBB, you can do it with no limits if you do like this. So it basically gives technical tips on how to scrape BBB without no problems. Yeah. And the drama is at the end, because of course they stopped, they corrected the mistake. So you see how following, you know, you think, oh, it's just, you know, people chatting, but actually it's the employees of scraping companies, and they're spilling the beans, if I can say so.
That's shocking. That's so available. And I guess how did OWN develop their own CTI, or how is this just hard-won knowledge, or where to look? And like a company thinking of doing this, what is the hurdles, or is it just easier to go with somebody like yourself? And
no, it depends. It depends. The thing is, we have experience in cybersecurity, and CTI is a process. We have a team with a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds in, you know, intelligence, cybersecurity. So you can do it yourself, the CTI, but you can come to us. So it's but it's a process, and we have people who are used to do this kind of things. So, and it takes time. I show you you know, it's a presentation. I show you the nice things, but you know, we have to sift through a lot of stuff before finding relevant information. It takes time. It's like police work, because you're gonna see a lot of things before finding something interesting.
That's right. And it seems to be a very, to your point, a very resource intensive effort. So I guess the takeaway is, unless you're really going to commit to doing this the right way, it's probably helpful to have somebody who has more time or more resources to kind of leverage what they have already. So that's and these types of I guess boards or chat rooms or groups where people share scraping knowledge. You said there seems to be 1 or 2 big ones, but I guess this information is kind of all over the place. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, it's like everything. So that's why the second step is processing.
Yeah.
You know, because there is a lot of data, you have to process it. So basically, you're gonna look, if you work for BBB, you're gonna work for BBB, but there is a lot of information. I'm just gonna show you another slide. It's how you turn this into a metric. So what do you see here? You see a metric, you see a graph. On the left is the price. At the bottom, you know, it's the date. So what is this? It's a big scraping company, and they sell a service. And it's how the price of the service changes over time. And what do you see? You see that the price, what they charge to scrape BBB, okay? You see the price was up, and then it was down. And in November, there were a lot of changes, and the price went up. So what does it mean? It means that the tools, maybe there was protection, you know. So maybe in November, BBB implemented some security changes, and then the price, the cost to scrape went up. So it's public data, you know. It's just you look at the price of scraping, and the fact that they changed many times, it means they were trying to go around, it's a supposition. They were trying to go around the defenses, and they could not, so they had to, or it was more complex, so the price went up. So it could be an indicator of that the fight, is working.
So that's really interesting. So this slide, just to summarize, so it shows that as maybe a company puts scraping mitigations or combats online scraping, the price of their data that scrapers get from their site goes up because of the amount of effort it takes to get around those mitigations, or the availability of the data because of the mitigations or the way the company is trying to defeat scrapers. Is that kind of a good summary of this chart, or?
Exactly. It's a very good summary.
Great. Yeah, this is very valuable for people to understand the market for scrape data and how it changes based on the way companies are trying to fight against unauthorized web scraping. Great.
And let's move to the next step. So the next step is analysis. Okay, so you have the data, you chose the data that's relevant to your company, to BBB, and then analysis. It's where usually you need to have experience. So I took an example, it's a real example from a scraping tool. You see on the left, it's a scraping tool, and it says, if you look at the first line, okay, it's gonna look at the user feed. So if you are on a social network, it's gonna look at the latest news. And the scraping tool is gonna scrape the data 10,000 times a day. So what does it mean? So it means that if you look, if you are a company, and if you look at all the user actions, if you look at the log, all the accounts that are doing 10,000 times a day, exactly, it means they are robots. So the goal is, it's what we give to, it's what we do is we use data, okay, and we try to give actionable intelligence, because with this, you can go and see your cybersecurity team and say, people who do exactly 10,000 a day are robots. And I always talk about technical, but we also work a lot with the legal departments. And sometimes for tools, we do the same kind of things. We look after businesses, after their tools, we identify them, and we have the same kind of documents for legal departments where we explain, okay, we identified this person doing this.
So that's really interesting. So in a sense, you can make a fingerprint for a company and say, or advise them on what their settings should be to defeat scrapers, but yet not make the user experience worse. And
Exactly.
that's very helpful. So like, for example, I could say, okay, if you see a request limit for this particular function and it hits 10,000, that's probably a scraper, and you should take
Exactly.
action against them
E-
versus just an end user.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
how common is this information for somebody? What amount of effort does it take to put this together for a company or even for your team? You probably have to see a lot of different scrapers. You probably have to see what the top and bottom numbers are for some of this stuff, right?
It takes a lot of time, as I said, because you see, I always say on TV, it's the same thing. When you see spy movies or police movies, you see the nice thing, and it takes 1 hour to solve something. But as I said, we sifted through a lot of different forums, lot of services, and we check, and a lot of time it's not interesting. It's our kind of work. And then you find the interesting thing, and you see how you can, communicate with the company to say, this is a problem, we may have a solution. And as I say, that's why the next step I wanted to show is how to communicate. So usually we communicate, there's 3 ways we communicate. There's 3 levels. Either, on an operational level. So it's the direct technical information. On the tactical level, so it means something a little bit higher view, or strategic. So it's when you talk with the stakeholders. It's with the management and communication. Don't forget, it's technical teams, legal teams, and other companies. That's why it's important to share. If you find something that could concern everybody, you could share it.
So on the slide here, you're saying like this is one of the alerts that your company provides, but this would be pretty standard in industry. And to let somebody know that this a particular activity has exceeded a threshold that you've set beforehand. And so this information you communicate to an internal team and this would be an example of a mitigation, because if you don't know that you're being scraped, how can you defend against it? So I mean, and
Exactly.
it doesn't that what it comes down to. I mean, in your experience, how many companies even realize they're being scraped, and how do they come to you? When do they, you mentioned at the very beginning of our talk, like you hear from an executive, hey, I found our data somewhere else, do something about it. But is that the typical path, or how are companies realizing that they need to set up this kind of get this threat
Mm.
intelligence, do this, and will work with a
So,
company like yours or build their own team?
so usually it's in two steps. Usually you have a website and they realize that data is leaking, that data is being sold and scraped.
Mhm.
So as I told, the first thing they do is they use something for the access. They either they buy a product or they create their own product. But if you go to the framework, the problem is that there are many steps, and even if you buy a product, some of the products can be bypassed.
Mm.
So it's when they realize that they cannot do everything themselves that they come to us because they're like, okay, we have some kind of anti-scraping, but they still can do it, of course, because I'm on the chat with the scrapers, with the high-level scrapers, and they discuss every day. They say, "Oh, this company did something," and then after 1 week, one of the users is like, "Okay, I found a way to bypass it." So it's like a lot of activities in IT. It's a competition between people who want to scrape and the security companies. So that's why this process, you have to be proactive because you know what they're doing and you have proactive and listen to what is happening because then you can stop them in the tracks. Just like I showed you on a forum where the guy, okay, they found a way to scrape BBB and then it was stopped. So it's a process never ending, but if it's working well, then you can stop, you can mitigate and you can stop some of the flow.
Because, to your point, the proactive versus reactive, it really seems that proactive threat management is what you need because once somebody scrapes your site, the data is available for sale somewhere else, right? I mean, that's what it amounts to. There's no getting that back. So it really does require a proactive posture. Is that your experience or?
Exactly. And especially now, the problem is for big companies. The problem is there's a lot of things, but you can get your user data stolen, you can get your business data stolen. And the problem is now there are more and more laws. So for companies, it means a lot of money for compliance, legal issues, money for litigation and fines. And the last time Europe asked USA to pay fines, you know how it ended. But
Well,
yeah, it's a growing problem, and there are more and more legislation. So that's why proactive is very important on all of the fields. So technical, from the user, from legal point of view, strive to make a difference.
so it seems like cyber threat intelligence and communicating this type of information is a crucial part of mitigation. Um, you would agree with that, or?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why usually we write to different persons. So as I said, we contact legal department, technical departments, but also the important thing would be if we could do something in MUSA to, share what we find. Because actually, what we see is threat actors. Usually, they don't they don't work scrape only one site. Usually, they work on one type of site. People will scrape all of the social networks. People will specialize in booking websites. So that's why it could be very beneficial to share the information because we each do work on our sites, but maybe we could share. And it's very important that it's proactive because if somebody saw a threat coming, you can tell someone else, and it's very efficient.
And so we're thinking about that and sharing information and some of these other mitigations. How effective are they? Because it seems like it's a real cat and mouse game against these people that are scraping and doing this type of activity and chatting about ways to defeat protections or tools that a company may purchase to prevent scraping. Um, but again, what would be a good outcome for a company that comes to you or implements some of this threat intelligence to do something about this kind of a problem?
So of course, as usual, uh, CTI, everything is money. Everybody is going to ask you about ROI, return on investment. So there are metrics. What usually we have two types of metrics. We have internal metrics and we have external metrics. For internal metrics is if you are BBB, a company, you will see if there is less web scraping, you will see less traffic, you will see better performance traffic. Your servers are going to be less overloaded. You're going to be less users complaining, less money spent on litigation. And very important also to see the efficiency, you have to measure external metrics. So if you go back and you think about the framework, all the steps is scraping is a chain, they target something, they scrape and they store it. So if you look at different points along the chain, usually what we measure the price of the tools, okay? What you can measure also is how effective are the tools, because as you saw, the tools have parameters, and the parameters can be modified if it's harder to scrape. So basically what we do is we sample different data at different steps. So we're going to look at the tools. We're going to look at the price of data. It's a very, very good. Metric. Is if it's expensive, it's because they have a problem. To scrape it, and that's why. So the tools, if they get more expensive, if they stop working, it's something that if you implement enough changes, the tools are going to break down. So you have along the chain, along the different steps, you measure different things, and then you can see. So for some of them, we have like a nice table, and you can see, okay, like 30% of the tools don't work anymore. The price went up 25%. And one thing I wanted to add is that now more and more data is behind login, because of a lot of recent decisions, the data, you can scrape what's public. It's what people admit. So a lot of things are behind login screens. But actually, there is a market for accounts, to scrape. And you can check the price of accounts, So different steps of the scraping chain, you can measure it. And then you can see at the end, every quarter, we do some kind of report and you say, okay, there was a difference.
But just to be clear, right, you said that there's a market for accounts to be used for scraping. So it seems that even if stuff is behind a paywall or an account, that there can be scraping within a company and there's a market for that data too. Is that kind of taking that too far, or is that correct?
No, it's correct. It's correct. And you see because of the law, a lot of recent decisions said you can claim that you can scrape what's public, but it just creates kind of a rift that's in the products and what is sold. But both, the dark side still exists, and there is still a lot of demand and a lot of tools to scrape what's behind login words.
And so there's a market for that. I mean, if people are willing to pay for it, I guess people will find a way to do it. That's very interesting. Now, what have you seen? I know there's a lot of talk about generative AI, and just so that everybody is kind of aware of this, generally what happens is you have a training set and people gather data to create training sets. The training set is used to build a model, and then you have model that's the output, and that's another place where data is gathered. But for generally for generative AI though, more companies are trying to gather data to build their own models. And so what has that done to scraping and to the value of scraped data on some of these marketplaces? Have you seen it going up, or has it kind of stayed static, or what have you seen out in the wild?
So I have two things to say about Gen AI. One thing, and it's very interesting, is that you can see some of the scraping companies, the big ones, are pivoting or creating advertising about scraping for to create data sets. It's interesting. So there, you can see there is a demand, and some of the big scraping companies are advertising, okay, you need to create data sets, use our scraping products. And one thing that I wanted to add, David, is a lot of people ask us, with all the LLMs, all the Gen AI, what's the danger? Like people are afraid that there's gonna be a product that you can just type, hey, can you scrape this site and no. I wanted to tell you it's not happening. There is no magic website. Some of products are created and they can scrape sites that are not protected. But we don't see in the future there will not be some kind of magic Gen AI that will scrape a correctly protected website. But what I wanted to say, what we see is, as I said, most of the protection is to detect if you are a human or a robot. And the Gen AI are very good at pretending to be human, and we see them, using Gen AI to pretend the way the mouse moves, the way the type, everything. They are very good at pretending to be human. They will not scrape magically a website. Don't be worried about this. It's not going to happen. But they are very good at tricking the defense systems. As you said, they can solve some of the captchas.
Now flip it around and say a lot of these Gen AI products are publicly accessible. Have you seen any increased instance of people trying to scrape directly from Gen AI platforms to get data?
Yes. As I told you, we saw a lot of people are trying, even to, they're trying to use some of the products. They are launching their own products using open source Gen AIs. But there is a lot of discussion, but there is no miracle happening. So we saw a lot of people trying, saying, "Hey, I could scrape a few things," but if you have good protection, they don't know how to bypass it. So there is a lot of activity, but we see no miracle. There is no product where you can say, "Hey, let's scrape, 5,000 profiles." It's not gonna happen. People try, but it's not gonna happen.
And just to kind of tie back to reporting and understanding the scraping problem, what are some of the key metrics a company would look at to understand the effectiveness of their mitigations against scraping?
Yeah, like I said earlier, you can look at internal metrics, external metrics. So if you're a company, it's server technical point of view is your bandwidth. Okay, how how many people are using it, how many requests are sent, and how fast you answer to the requests. Because if you are flooded with requests, of course, the service is going to be bad. So internal is service level, and the external is mostly the price of data, for how much your data is being sold. It's one of the most important things, the tools and the data. If you had to, for metrics, it would be inside, internal is the bandwidth, the service to the users, and external, it's how much your data is sold. If the price goes up, it means, they have a hard time to access it.
Well, this has been a great talk. I don't know if you have any more slides, or can we go back to your first slide?
No, it's okay. We can go back to the first
Back to the first slide, and then I'll just wrap this up with, as we end this or conclude this webinar, we hope to leave you with a deeper understanding of how cyber threat intelligence can be a game changer in the realm of scraping mitigation. Thank you for joining MUSA, and we look forward to your active participation in future webinars and question and answer sessions that we have in the future. And we'd like to, a special thanks again to Morgan for joining us this evening to talk through the more technical aspects of scraping mitigation, and cyber threat intelligence. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Take care.